Welcome to the Intercut podcast channel, the weekly place where we talk about the latest in movies, TV, and entertainment that you can't cut away from. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, still practicing the dance moves from Natu Natu, it's Arturo Zurita.
That's a workout right there. You do the Natu Natu thing. All the sitting you did for all the movies we watched at South by, boom, all the brisket burned out just by doing one of those
Exactly.
dances.
Yeah, you just got to do that for like 30 minutes a day, and you can eat as much Texas barbecue as your heart desires. I
Yeah, the
still
Natu
feel
Natu
like
X workout.
I'm still feel like I'm working out some of the brisket and various oh my god sausage
You'll
and
be sweating
beef
it out.
ribs and such good
That's
stuff.
why
It's
gotta
all
represent what the
still
bookie
seeping
said.
through my pores. But I can't complain. We ate well in Texas. We watched good movies in Texas, and we also watched the 2023 Academy Awards. I think it's the first time that we've watched the Oscars together, so
Together,
that was kind of fun too.
we've always been on the virtual stage or going back to it, but we had the Cheers Theater this time around. We had
Exactly.
Amanda with us. We had our partners with us. We had Murjani with us as well, and we had a little party. We
Yeah.
had ordered pizza
Shouts
from, I
Mujani.
believe it was, who'd you say? You said Elijah Wood had recommended it. We saw all of the
Personally.
volunteers. Yeah, they had this special pie
Via
from over there.
313, was it?
Yeah, let's keep it to the brisket down there. The
Yeah.
pie was okay.
I mean, I didn't travel to Texas to eat pizza, if we're being quite
Nah.
honest. So, not my favorite meal we had there, but we did have plenty of good meals. Uh, Also, some salted cashew blondies that I was pretty proud of. I
Hmm.
got to whip up on our first week there. So, we ate well in Texas and watched a lot of good stuff. Also, got to talk about the Oscars, right? We're a little bit behind, but we still have some lingering questions, things on our mind about a pretty interesting evening culminating this year's award season. There's lots of interesting storylines that were going into this year's Oscars, but lots of stuff to talk about now as well. Let's start with the broadcast first and foremost, because this year's broadcast brought things back to basics with one host, with all the categories being broadcast on the show, old fashioned clips montages. There weren't a lot of big swings, but there also was not a lot to complain about for this year's show. So, Art, do you think the Oscars should take a listen from this year's broadcast and just keep it simple going forward?
I very much enjoyed, appreciated, and shout out the fact that they were able to actually make it about the movies. I thought the intro, where they were cutting up montages to the films, specifically from the perspective of the production designers, being able to have a lot of the, costumes, editing, all of that introduced at the beginning, and then the nominees when they were introducing like the costumes, they had the setup behind them. When they were talking about editing, it was really cool to see the little intro have someone with like the moviola and then move on to like Avid and Premiere. That's
Yeah.
what I love watching the Oscars for. I remember the one with Neil Patrick Harris was very we love movies centric. I really
Yes.
appreciated that from his ceremony. I thought the ceremony had that as well, and then interspliced the idea of yo, we know a lot of people watched last year, and we're really going to over remind you what happened last year. So yes, stick to the loving movies portion of it. Um, I think they were really hyped up off of all the viewership they were going to get from the moment that was last year though.
Yeah, I think they definitely were cognizant of the fact that
Two.
a lot of people were at least thinking about the slap, if not tuning in specifically to see some kind of recreation of it. And yeah, I'll agree with you. They definitely were a bit hyper focused on it, particularly, like we'd already heard Chris Rock give his take on it the week before the Oscars. I feel like there's a limited amount of ground you can cover. One slap joke would have sufficed. Two maybe would have been okay. Five or six
Every
was pushing it.
commercial break, you got a show, bro. You got
Definitely
a
too
late night
much.
show. Go do it
Yeah,
over there. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, they definitely could have spread the humor out a little bit more. But I'm with you. I think that they did a lot of the things that I hope for from a Oscar ceremony in honoring the different categories and giving you a bit of behind the scenes. Like I really love that moment when they were presenting best editing, where they had the one woman sitting behind her with like the old reel to reel editing system, and then another person sitting there with Premiere, right? Like it's showing you the craft that goes into all this, and also not taking like too much time. I thought it was interesting that this year they doubled up the presenters for a lot of the categories so that they would give one award, take a couple steps back, and then just step forward and give the next award right out. Kept things moving. I feel like we waste a lot of time in just like waiting for people to get to the stage to introduce the thing that we actually want to see them give out. And even when it came to the way that they introduced the different Best Picture nominees, because they always do a little bit of like a shout out of a feature of what the films that were nominated for Best Picture get. And they did it coming back from commercial rather than bringing somebody out and having them give a minute long spiel. Like it just sort of kept things moving and kept the focus on the nominees and the clips and the stuff that people who care about this stuff and want to tune into the Oscars actually care about. So I do feel like in a lot of ways that the experimentation with the Oscars, like I like to see people try things out, but I don't like to see people throw the entire formula away. I feel like it's a formula for a reason.
You think that if what happened last year and all the eyes on it, do you think they would have been going for more crazy stuff? They've tried a lot of experiments in the past of, oh, it's going to end on Chadwick Boseman. It's going to be this,
Mm-hmm.
dumb jets, people coming off from just a bunch of different experiments. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for the catastrophe, if you want to call it, that was last year, would they have settled, like you said, simmered down and have it be a little bit more classical? Or would they have
So
attempted something different?
the slap definitely overshadows everything, but it's easy to forget that last year's ceremony was like not a great Oscar ceremony, a slap aside, right? It was another
Mm-hmm.
one where they struggled for momentum because they were juggling different hosts, didn't really feel like anybody's hands were on the steering wheel guiding the show. So I think there probably would have been a return to some kind of normalcy anyway. But when you put on top of that like an Oscars crisis team situation, yeah, they were definitely like they're very conservative and conservative even down to their choice in host, picking somebody who has a lot of experience doing it. In fact, I that's brings me to my second question, and one that I'm not sure you're going to be very excited to answer, but I have to ask it: is Jimmy Kimmel the best Oscars host of the past 20 years? Because I
No.
was going through the names. Let me read you the names. In the past 20 years, it's been Jimmy Kimmel 3 times, no one 3 times, Regina Hall, Wanda Sykes, and Amy
I
Schumer,
like no one. No one was pretty good.
Chris Chris Rock, Neil Patrick Harris, Ellen DeGeneres, Seth MacFarlane, Old Billy Crystal, James Franco and Anne Hathaway, Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin, Hugh Jackman, Jon Stewart, Ellen DeGeneres, Jon Stewart, Chris Rock, and again Billy Crystal. I mean, I'll hear an argument for Jon Stewart or Chris Rock,
I like Chris
but
Rock. I like Billy Crystal. And you had mentioned one more.
Jon Stewart, Ellen DeGeneres,
No.
Seth MacFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane. Rewatch Seth
I think Seth
MacFarlane.
MacFarlane's underrated. Yeah.
It is very underrated. And I think 2 years ago when we had the Nobody, people went back and were like, yo, do y'all remember this? It's like, yes. Sometimes it takes a little bit for people to like
Mm-hmm.
back off from what he was saying. Because I know he had a bunch of sketches that people were like, wow, this is ridiculous. How dare you call that out? And then it turns out to be a pattern that we see for the next decade. So when people go back to it, he was already telling you how
Mm-hmm.
the Oscars worked. I think he was the closest to a Ricky Gervais that we've had for the Oscars. So
Yeah,
I think there's plenty.
one that actually kind of worked in more of a subversive way and didn't feel like when they bring out Hassan Minaj and he doesn't like get the assignment or something, right? Like it
Trying
Seth
too hard, yeah.
MacFarlane, yeah, Seth MacFarlane understood the like grandeur of the evening, but also was able to like be silly and be a little bit more modern in his sense of
Mm-hmm.
humor. I feel like we're in the minority on McFarlane, though. I feel like a lot of people didn't love his
Yeah,
performance, and I
just
like
gotta go
Jon
back.
Stewart, but that was over
What
15 years ago. At this
what
point,
year
I
was
couldn't
Jon
believe it when I
Stewart?
looked it up.
Like what
2000,
one?
jeez, 2007. So that
Ooh, No Country for
was
Old
he
Men.
the There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men year. He might have been.
Damn. Because
Yeah,
that's memorable Oscars in and of itself, but that's also because of the lineup. If I may, with
right.
Kimmel, It's come on, bro. It's the corporate pick. He's working for ABC. Half the show
Yeah.
ends up being ABC stuff, which was another aspect of it, where it's like you're not even cutting to a commercial break. They
Mhm.
had Disney ads within the show. I know
Yeah.
other
So
Peacock does it for their stuff, but like he's the corporate pick
that
in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean there is that like integration. I do think that Kimmel is like a pretty adept host of these things. Like he's able to
Late night
react
host.
in the moment in a yeah, but he's also like a genuine comedian, right? Like he's not somebody who needs to have all this stuff scripted for him. When
Sure,
something
I
interesting
agree.
happens in the show, he can react to it in like a fun way, and I think those are some things that are important for an Oscars host. It doesn't make him better than Jon Stewart, better than Chris Rock necessarily, but like it makes him definitely better than no one, in my opinion, at the
And I'd
very
take him over
least.
a Fallon. I agree with that. Over a
Yes,
Fallon who'd just be
yes,
laughing at the mistake or something like that. But in the stuff that we praised in this show, all the added extras that they had and the love for movies, I don't think that comes from Kimmel. When I see someone like who do we just say from How I Met Your Mother? What's his name?
Oh,
When
Neil
he
Patrick
hosted,
Harris.
when he did that and he was talking about how much I love movies, I believed it came from him. When Jimmy Kimmel hosts and they do a segment honoring movies and then comes to him and be like, Babylon bombed. I can't believe everyone's here. So it's like I I don't believe that those edits come from him where it was more integrated when you had a host who you could truly see cares about it. So that's my only
I hear
difference
that.
between it.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's certainly not the worst that we could get, but like in getting back to
Good enough.
basics, he
That's the
good enough,
greatest
right? And
part for the
high,
Oscars. The good enough host.
hey, high as a bike was a really solid joke. That was funny and funny on a couple different levels too.
Which one was that one?
When he was talking about Seth Rogen getting Steven Spielberg high and said that Steven Spielberg's been high as a bike.
Yeah, that's raw because of the emblem logo. That's the funniest
Yeah,
funniest
it's
line in his
great.
intro.
um, what what else is there? Oh, I wanted to bring up, since you brought it up, the whole bit about ABC buying an ad for The Little Mermaid. So supposedly the Academy opened up several slots, and I think it was like a $7 or $8 million ad buy. Matt Maloney on the Puck is the one who uncovered this, so shouts to the source for that. And they offered it up to all the studios. The only studios who bid were ABC or Disney buying ads money from themselves to get their Little Mermaid ad out there, and then Warner Brothers, that whole like ode to 100 years of Warner Brothers movies, that was that same $7 million block ad buy. So I don't know why more of the studios didn't like jump on that. I don't know why Warner Brothers didn't use that to like promote their movies or something. I don't know why Universal didn't drop a big Oppenheimer ad in the middle of the Oscars. That would have been dope. But that's at least the story behind that one. If it is, even if it
Seven
is
mil.
a big bummer.
It's not Super Bowl views though, so I don't really get it.
Yeah.
Like I get it, you want your movie ad during the place for movies, but honestly, we ended up seeing more streaming ads than everything else for TV shows. I wrote
Yeah.
that down. There was way more for that than actual films during a film night. So
All right. So the big Oscar winner of the night was, of course, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which took home 7 Oscar wins for Best Picture, for Best Directing, for uh, for Best Screenplay, for Best Actress, for Supporting Actor, Supporting Actress, as well as Best Film Editing. On top of all of that, Art, in a different section of the multiverse where films are limited to only one Oscars win per year, what category would you have liked to see go to Everything Everywhere? If it could only win one.
rating.
You think that's the place where it excelled, at least to you?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people connect to with the story and they want other people to see, they go into it and they see all of this crazy zaniness, all this
Right.
visual vomit, if you may, that's being thrown at people's faces, and you see a lot of people who just tune out. But there is a story there, and a lot of people who give it, it's a long movie too, who give it the 2 hours and change to sit and watch it, end up coming out understanding that story. I think on paper, it reads way more better. I think a lot of people can connect to it, no problem, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
think anyone denies the heart of the movie. They just don't want to sit through all of the butt plugs. So yeah, I think screenwriting was easily one of the things that most people can agree. Maybe not the editing. There's obviously been very
Mm-hmm.
divisive on the acting categories, but easily I think it's been the one place that the Oscars, while playing it safe, have been uh, pretty reassured of honoring genre movies when it comes to writing, from Get Out to Shape of Water one too, right?
Yeah.
And several of other Promising Young Woman being a thriller. So I think that that's where
Mhm.
it would have. I had no problem winning that category, and I think it
Yeah.
was the strongest category for it to win. It was also the first one, right, that the Daniels ended up collecting an award for. So it was
Yeah,
their
the
first
first of
feature
their
length.
three that night. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it that feels like the category that in a more traditional Oscars year, that's the only one it would have won, right? Like it would have been
That, thank you, because
blanked
we
by the other
discussed that too.
category. Hmm. Because usually, or at least in the past, not so much in the past couple years, personally I feel like, but in the past it used to be where like the movie that was too cool for the Oscars would get its Oscar, and
Yeah.
now those movies are getting those big nominations, but getting potentially 7 Oscar wins
Will
here.
they continue to? Because that was one thing we had mentioned. We see a precursor for where they have
Hmm.
honored genre movies for writing, but we talked about them winning Best Director, and you're like, this may be the only time that happens. So is it
Yeah,
really a change in the directing in the Best Picture, or are they just going to default back now that we get back to normal? Okay, just reserve it for the writing.
yeah. That was another one of my questions, actually. How many Oscars do you think Daniel's next movie will get nominated for? The blank.
It has nothing to do with them. This movie is
Well,
not crazier than Swiss Army Man. A farting
yeah,
corpse and butt plug fight scenes, there's no difference, in my opinion, between the two. It just hit at the
right.
right time for the right voters, and I just, yeah, I it's not that I'm calling it a fluke. I'm just saying they've never honored movies like this in the past, and I don't think they're going to go back to honoring movies like this in a while.
Right. I mean, well, there's two ways to look at it, right? Like, if you look at what the Daniels have done and their style, that's this like maximalist, hyper stylistic, very silly, kind of fratty humor. That stuff does not typically belong at the Academy
Mm-hmm.
Awards. So if they're going to go out and make a feature length version of the Turn Down for What music video or something like that, absolutely nothing. I agree with you. Zero. There is the chance that after spending the past year talking about the importance of family and connection and heart and seeing how people have really responded to all those elements and everything everywhere all at once, that's going to be something they focus a little bit more on their future movies, and
Sure.
maybe they lean a little bit more towards the Academy. I'd like to think that's not who they are, because I think they're
Nah.
hyper creative people who chase their own fancy, whatever that might be, and they're going to follow their inspiration, not necessarily follow the positive feedback loop. So I'm going to go a little more optimistic than you. I think they'll get 1 or 2 nominations for that next movie. Maybe it'll be like a costume production design thing. Maybe it'll just be writing, like we think a different version of Everything Everywhere All at Once might have gotten.
Yeah, and
But
that doesn't change.
absolutely not the juggernaut that Everything Everywhere
Yeah,
was.
that their next movie might be better than this movie. I think their directing is going to get better because it has in every film that they've done. That has nothing to do with how I feel about The Boys. It's how I feel about the
Yeah,
Oscars treating The
absolutely.
Boys. That's
Yeah.
it. I feel like the Oscars saw it as the most trendy thing, so they over awarded it. I don't believe in any other year. If this movie came out 2 years ago, if this movie came out when Swiss Army Man came out, they would have treated it like Swiss Army Man.
Yeah. If this was their debut and they hadn't already kind of maybe established themselves, or they also happened to luck into a couple, maybe luck is the wrong way to put it, but it's become the center of all this heartwarming, you know, kind of storylines, whether it's the Michelle Yeoh finally getting her crowning award, or Kiki Kwan being back from, the
Will
Hollywood
they honor them,
Netherlands.
or is it going to be
That
another
that's another question, and we will get to
Roma
that. I'm going to circle back to
nomination?
my
Yeah.
my last question about the Everything Everywhere. If it could only win 1 Oscar, I think I might give it to directing. And that's not because I think the Daniels are the best directors in the category. In fact, I do not think that at all. But ultimately,
Okay.
with this movie that is made up of all these very disparate elements that are all really exciting and strong, I think there's something about the way they were able to bring them all together, to bring that acting in with that style of cinematography, with the production design, that speaks to their ability to command a very a very out there project, but still give it give it direction, give it focus. Um, that speaks to their abilities as directors. So like, I don't know, if I could only
Sure.
give them one, maybe I would give them directing here. but
I'd go second
uh,
editing because of what you described. I think the editing is where
mhm.
they were able to pull that through for that one. Did they get editing?
Uh,
Who got editing? I
they did
forgot.
get editing. Yes, they did. And it was only the editor's second movie. You know what his first one was?
Swiss Army?
Death of Dick Long. Everything
I like how
Everywhere All
Swiss
at
Army,
Once. Yeah,
people went back to Swiss Army and made that go from rotten to fresh, but they didn't touch Dick Long. That's where they drew the line.
exactly. Um, Everything Everywhere All at Once had 7 Oscar wins, which tied films like Lawrence of Arabia, The Sting, Out of Africa, Dances with Wolves, Schindler's List, Shakespeare in Love. It won more Oscars than any film since Gravity in 2013. Just throwing that out there.
I like what Pink Sweet said. Nope,
I'll
didn't
put that
get
back up.
anything. So if
Mm-hmm.
y'all don't think that the same thing's gonna happen again for these boys, I don't see it. But if it does, that makes me worry more. If it does, because then it's like you had mentioned it. Is the Academy changing to them, which also isn't right? You're just changing to the trend,
Right.
or will they be changing for the Academy? So I almost worry more if they come back. I just want to see them come back and make a movie. The awards run is separate to everything else, but yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that the Academy has thanked somebody, honored them, and then just because for Peel it's been two, and that one, both of his movies, in my opinion, had several categories that it could have won. Forget just nominating.
Yeah.
I think it was worthy of some wins. So
Yeah,
I
I
hope it
mean, and
doesn't. But
hopefully, yeah, exactly. Hopefully, they follow that trajectory of Jordan Peele in just sort of getting more ambitious and not necessarily, you know, curtailing their style to suit an Oscar vote,
and give the actors jobs. Y'all had narratives for them going in for these wins. Give them
right?
jobs because that's the whole point.
All right, let's talk a little bit about A24 though, because when
Wow.
they picked up all those awards for Everything Everywhere All at Once, as well as the award for Best Actor, which went to Brendan Fraser, they became the first studio to win all of the above the line Oscars in a single year. No distributor has ever done that before A24. So I got to ask you, based on that,
Wow.
does this year's Oscars give A24 the title belt for best film distributor in the game
Right now, absolutely.
right
What
now?
they have coming up this year, absolutely. Out of Sundance, they
Mm-hmm.
had the best movie. Two best
Past
movies
Lives.
for really talking about it. And Talk to
Talk to
Me,
me.
a
Yeah,
movie that
picked
I
it
think
up.
is really going to shake up
Not
stuff
to mention,
for the horror genre.
not to mention, You Hurt My Feelings, another one of my favorite films out of
They
Sundance.
have so many loaded for this year. I think they have become synonymous with indie cinema, or to some people, it's not even indie cinema anymore. It's just cinema. I think a lot of the youth has gravitated towards this company as being the thing they really want to praise, whereas every other big, from the big five companies, they're considered too corporate. A lot of people doubt what they have to say, yet A24 can make something and they flock to it. They have got the merch game down. They have got social
Mm.
media down. I think they
Hmm.
own every corner of it. They were one of the first ones to also be attached to Letterboxd, to be attached to IMDb, so they understand the game.
Not only all that, but like they've found some financial success too. We talked about it all last year, but Everything Everywhere All at Once was like a great box office hit. And not all of their films hit, but it feels like they're finding more and more ways to break through to get these things that are more than just film Twitter favorites, but actually get some box office money in the end, you know?
Lady agrees with you.
Uh yeah, she's a big A24 fan, the biggest I've met actually,
Massive.
but yeah, I mean it's hard to argue, and I feel like these things change pretty quickly. So I'm not going to say like this is the decade of A24, but like it's
No.
definitely at least like the 3 to 5 year run of A24
Yeah.
for now.
The Whale's A24, right? And that's
A24 as well, yeah.
director Aronofsky. And You Hurt
Hmm.
My Feelings is director
Nicole Hollof Center,
Nicole. So they're all massive
Yeah,
directors. Then they're
exactly, yeah.
working with like independent filmmakers, which are the brothers that just came from Australia, the Rocka Rocka Boys. The lineup of filmmakers that they have working with them is unbeatable.
Yeah.
We go to film festivals and people who do not care about a South by Southwest, a Sundance, if they have the ability to, what are all of the intercuties looking for? That A24 movie.
Hmm.
They have helped uh, the film festivals. There was a line from Air where it's like, who's really the one helping who? Is it the festival boosting up A24? Is it A24
Yeah.
boosting up the festival?
And look, like, Netflix, Amazon, Apple,
They're good.
Universal, Paramount, they're making
Sure.
good movies, but there isn't like a somewhat of a guarantee. And I don't want to say that every A24 movie is good. It's not. But I think there is like a greater chance of a really good movie with that A24 logo in front of it than most studios right now. And look, like
Hmm.
there's a lot of great ones out there. It felt like for a minute like Neon was going to pass them when they had that Parasite portrait double. It kind of feels like A24 grabbed the boutique belt back.
Yes, it did. It
Yeah,
did. No,
absolutely.
that's the best way because Neon didn't give up. They just took a route that wasn't as successful as
Mhm.
A24, and now they got the zeitgeist.
All right, let's talk about those Oscar winners. The Michelle Yeoh, Brendan Fraser, Kihi Kwan, and Jamie Lee Curtis quartet, who all picked up acting Oscars. My question to you is, who do you think is the most likely to win another Academy Award?
Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it kind of feels like an easy answer. I think Fraser
Yeah.
was such a giant star at one point, and this is such a crowning achievement, and people are so happy to see him back. It's also just about the roles that Hollywood
Talk about
offers
it.
people, right? And
Exactly.
uh, this is not the like youngest crop of nominees. I feel like Brendan might be the youngest among them, though.
That's crazy.
Um, and like yeah, particularly like Jamie Lee, it's rare enough to even see her in consideration for an award. It's odd that she won this one, but it for Jamie, for Kihi Kwan, and for Michelle, there is this sense that like we're awarding them partially as like a career achievement.
Legacy.
I'd be
Yes.
really yeah, I'd be really curious to see if this does maybe give Michelle Yeoh some more opportunities. But like we've seen this with Halle Berry before. Like just because you win the Best Actress Oscar doesn't mean that like the great roles are going to keep coming at you.
And
And
who gave it to her? Yeah.
What Michelle Yeoh is like known for, what she can return to, are not the kinds of movies that tend to be in the Oscars discussion either.
I agree. For Key, he's become the poster boy for like an ad for Hollywood, and they have
Mm-hmm.
just loved this idea of the come up, and I always find it crazy. Thank you for accepting me back, people who didn't accept me back. So
Right.
I see the biggest thing for him is going to be franchises. They
Mm-hmm.
might sneak him back into an Indiana Jones. They keep talking about a Goonies too, but to be able to get a role like this, you were talking about with Michelle, she can be in another movie, but is it going to be as well written as what the Daniels made for her? Like that's the thing.
Exactly.
They will write stuff for Jamie Lee and for Brendan, no problem. He will have a dozen roles coming his way that can score him a nomination. You had mentioned who's going to get a win. I don't know about a win. Brendan for sure, because Brendan's the
Yeah.
only one who I see can get nominated again. Because I see them giving scripts to Brendan that will make it all the way to the Oscars again. Of course, I want to
Yeah.
wish the opposite for the rest of them there, but hey, I look at everybody there, and I'm just, as much as I don't think they were all the best performers of their categories, it's really cool to see all of them get nominated and win for a comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's the thing, is like I think the only one of these wins that actually made me like upset was Jamie Lee.
Upset.
At least
It makes no sense. Again, going back to
yeah.
that, I can respect a comedy win. That's crazy. Because
Right.
we talked about that in our South by stuff as well. Comedies get so downplayed that they don't see them as
Mm-hmm.
something that has that dramatic value. And they proved it differently. However, that was such a strong category. And I worry that they're taking the wrong bit of like, oh, look at her hot dog fingers when the actress, I think you were really rooting for Condon, Carrie. Um,
That, or like if we're gonna do Lifetime Achievement Award, Angela Bassett's sitting right there.
that too. That too. But I don't know, man. I don't see it there. I would have given it to Stephanie. I thought Stephanie had way more to work with. That's the whole point of the
Yeah.
movie.
No, exactly. Like if this is an
Sure.
award for everything everywhere all at once, Stephanie is the better role. If this is a Lifetime Achievement Award, Angela Bassett's right there. And if we're just talking about who had the best acting in the category, it's Carrie Condon. I don't think that's much of an argument, but
Yeah, I think it's
yeah,
Gary Condon. I'd also throw in Hong Chao, bro. I like Hong Chao, but Hong
yeah,
Chao's going to
I
have
like Hong
a
Chao a lot.
dozen more times to get it for sure. Yeah, that's someone who's shout out Hong Chao. I'm not going to take a detour there. Just shout out Hong Chao. I agree
Hey,
with you. It's gotten to the point where the Oscar or award pundits are just like, I don't know. I've thought about it, and why not give it to Jamie Lee? That's the settlement there. Why
right?
not?
Why not?
Don't hurt my awards circuit that we have going on. Please don't question it. No, it's I don't see it other than it being a legacy award for her. Um, I would say go back and like cover everything that she said leading up to this win. She's never cared for the Oscars.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's also funny to give the lifetime achievement to award to somebody who doesn't seem particularly invested in it. Like I don't
Someone
think
who
we
said
would have
that she
gotten
doesn't want it before her name in the trailer. She's like, "Don't call me Academy Award winner. Call me Jamie Lee Curtis." Because
right.
yeah, it's back to that thing. Who's getting more press there? Academy Award being mentioned in every trailer for a movie you're gonna have for the rest of your life, or your name, which should be the standout on the marquee.
Yeah, I feel like if the roles were reversed, we wouldn't have seen such a dejected reaction from Jamie Lee that like the one we got from Angela Bassett, which still kind of breaks my heart to see.
It is. A lot of people were
But
upset saying that she can't act that way. I'm gonna give that one fair game, bro. It's fine.
yeah, I think
It's
when
fine.
you're Angela Bassett, you can kind of do whatever you want at the
Yeah,
Oscars.
it's not like Sufjan.
Maybe,
Sufjan's is funny and it's also disrespectful, but his is like really funny. Hers, I get. I
yeah.
understood it.
All right. So speaking of Angela Bassett, I was curious which Oscar losing actor who's never won do you think will be the first to win? Let me give you your options because they are Austin
Dude.
Butler, Colin Farrell, Bill Nighy, Paul Mescal, Andrea Riseborough, Michelle Williams, Ana de Armas, Angela Bassett, Carrie Condon, Stephanie Hsu, Hong Chow, Brendan Gleeson, Brian Tyree Henry, Judd Hirsch, and Barry Keegan. A pretty excellent lineup of people who have yet to win an Oscar.
Okay. So the question is, which of those losers will win
Which loser
first?
will be a winner first?
First? I don't know about first, but it surprises me that Michelle Williams hasn't won one. That's insane to me.
Five-time nominee at this point.
No, she's kind of a goat. And then the other two, just because they're young, I can't say first, but I expect them to have the longest careers. Barry Keoghan, Hong Chau.
Yeah. Uh, they're both some of my favorites in the category. It's just a matter of like if they're going to get the right
When?
role,
I
right?
think
And
it's a
when.
matter of when.
Yeah. For me, I feel like there's a good chance Colin Farrell. It kind of feels like he's having a moment. Kind of feels like people want him to get one of these.
Yeah. He's been
And
in the game for a minute.
and he's been giving excellent performances in really interesting movies. He's working with a lot of very interesting filmmakers. I could see that happening sooner rather than later. I also would not
Phone
discount
booth legacy
Bri-
award.
I would not discount Brian Tyree Henry, who
Oh,
has a
Brian Tyree
habit.
gets added to the Barry Hong. Yeah,
Yeah, he just has a habit of showing up and being the absolute best actor
best.
in the project. So if he's in the right movie, that Oscar is coming, right? Like they
I see
didn't
that.
nominate anything from Causeway except for him.
You don't think Austin Butler's ever going to be in a movie ever again?
No, I'm just worried about him doing his Elvis voice in Dune Part 2.
Mm. Yeah, cut that out. Um, but yeah, no, it'll be really interesting to see a lot of these nominees, especially in the future, to
Yeah.
see who's the first to score. I like the Paul Mescal little note there as well, because yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of
these
people think Paul Mescal
actors
is
are
going
really
to
young.
be back at the Oscars sooner rather than
For
later.
sure.
I'm curious if he's going to get like the exact right role to do it. But he's a good actor, so I wouldn't be
Yeah, he's a
surprised
good
at the
actor
very
who's going
least.
to take those roles. The ones like Austin Butler worry me because you're not going to replicate your rollout of being gone for
Right.
2 years, changing your voice, and if that's what led you to getting the nomination, when are you going to replicate that again? You know, a lot of these other actors got nominated for their talent. And that's why we're worried that a lot of the Everything Everywhere All at Once people were writing off this, oh, it's been 30, 40 years.
Right.
Now it's not. Now we're back down to zero. So what's the next campaign going to be? That's my worry.
Yeah. We will see. And also,
Austin
it's a
Butler
little
gone
silly
for
to
5 years for Dune.
exactly.
Turns
Yeah,
his
he's
skin
really
blue.
he's becoming the sandworm.
Unreal.
Moving on, All Quiet on the Western Front won 4 Academy Awards, making it the biggest winner for Netflix in their history. It picked up international
Really?
film, production design, original score, and cinematography. Roma only won 3 Oscars. So yeah, this is now the big dog in Netflix awards history. But I'm wondering if you think that this spell, the way that the industry has moved increasingly back towards movie theaters, do you think that Netflix's best picture dreams are dead in the water, at least for the moment? Because it doesn't feel like they had a juggernaut this year. They put a lot of money into White Noise, which you and I really liked, but I don't think
Yeah.
anybody else did.
No, and I think that was also very much a Netflix movie. I wonder if the movies that you had just mentioned that they have had the most success with are international films. And I think
Right.
maybe a lot of voters don't realize that those are also streaming movies because something like Roma, something like this, had a huge theatrical release overseas, here as
Mm-hmm.
well, before it hits Netflix. A lot of people didn't even watch it on Netflix. They went to their Academy Theater screenings. I think because it's a foreign film, a lot of people don't associate it with the American market. So when you have The Irishman, or you have what you just mentioned, the what you just mentioned, the one
Roma
with
or
the train.
Quiet?
Yeah, a lot of people feel that they're still streaming movies,
Yeah.
um, but Apple did win, and I think that opens up the floodgates. So I don't think we have to wait that long. I still think within the next decade we're going to see a lot of other streamers win. At least 2 to 3
Yeah.
more streamers will win. There's a chance
I
it could be 4.
I I agree with you there. Like, I don't think the door is closed on streaming movies winning. And I just retweeted earlier this week an interesting bit of news that apparently Apple is pushing $1 billion towards their upcoming movies, and they're trying to give them all big theatrical releases, stuff like Napoleon, the upcoming Ridley Scott one,
That's
maybe even
Netflix.
Killers of the Flower Moon. No, this is Apple. This is Apple.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
sad, bro. Those are sick.
Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese coming too. Yeah, so like I don't
Napoleon.
think streamers are incapable of winning this Best Picture Oscar, but at least right now in Netflix's current iteration, it feels like they're a lot more focused on making the next Gray Man and making another season of Stranger Things or whatever the
You
new
think
Stranger
so?
Things is going to be,
I
than
don't
they
think so.
are on doing a Best Picture. You don't think so?
They got Fincher's movie, right?
Yeah, although it's I don't know if a David Fincher movie called The Killer is necessarily like the biggest Oscar play. Like
It
they
could be.
they have a good relationship with Fincher.
That they have good relationships with great filmmakers, and you would
That's
argue
true.
that just because they haven't won doesn't mean they haven't made an Oscar caliber movie. Correct? Previously,
Right.
they have
Like
made films.
there have been yeah, like there's in a different year the Irishman probably would have won Best Picture.
Yes, sir. So I don't think they're gonna stop making those movies. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of have the Oscars grown up, given it to Apple, and now realize, okay, now let's go back to not dismissing movies that don't get played at AMC for the Best Picture run because they were on streaming.
Right.
I think that they're going to look at directors who are getting the money and award them eventually. So I think it's we're simmering back down from theatrical to streaming, and we will get back to like who's making the best movie. And if it's Netflix who has the best relationship with directors, while Warner Bros is firing everybody, I
Right.
think they're gonna go somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely wouldn't say Netflix is like permanently out or whatever. I kind of feel
Mm-hmm.
like maybe the next couple years they won't be as much of a force, but one movie can change all of that, right? And nobody was thinking that All Quiet on the Western Front was even going to be that big of an Oscar player, and then it ended up winning the second
Y'all were
most
worried. Y'all,
Oscars.
y'all thought it was gonna take everything.
There
I
are
thought it
some
was an
people out
alternate
there.
world where the Germans won, and no, it's forced still a lot though.
Yeah,
But that's
still a
crazy.
lot, still a lot. All right, let's go back to the ceremony for a little bit because Natu Natu picked up the
Yes,
Best
sir.
Original Song Oscar, and Kiravani sang a cover of the Carpenters' "Top of the World." It was one of the most fun acceptance speeches of the night. Art, what did you think of the speeches in general, and did you have any favorite moments from them?
Favorite moments. I will say one thing that I enjoyed was how they shot them. They had these beautiful compositions. They had this side
Mm-hmm.
camera so that you can get the person's side profile with their win for the movie in the back. They had, I forgot who won it. It had this perfect like coming. I think it was for Key. The camera was right in front and like it did a dolly into him with the crane and like he knew it too. So it was like it was almost like the way they had the camera setups. It allowed the person giving the speech to almost self direct themselves because they knew exactly where the lens was. And I don't know, dude. It was blocked beautifully. I don't know who the director of the ceremony was. I know that Jimmy Kimmel and his group came together for it. I just thought the way that it was, all of the speeches were blocked, looked fantastic. I'll skim through some of my favorites over here that I had pulled up. But the only other thing I'd comment is, man, with all the time we were saving, they were still cutting some people off for speeches and then giving other
Yeah.
people a little bit more time, and we're just never gonna get that fixed.
Well, let's shout out Glenn Weiss, who both produced and directed the telecast. I agree with you. I just think the
It's
the
clean.
the actual technical nature of it was clean, was beautiful. Like people, a lot of people made fun of how close the Gaga performance was, but it was still like a striking visual. And I think they
Quite.
did a good job of like, for the most part, creating striking, memorable images that didn't feel like out of place in an Oscars telecast.
Hmm.
Um, Devesh in the live stream mentioning the Irish Goodbye team singing Happy Birthday was kind of fun. It was fun. I wanted it to not go on super long, so I'm glad that they didn't do like the full thing. Um, I loved, as I mentioned, this moment where Kiravani sung the Carpenters cover. I feel, I don't know, it's an original song winner composing us an original song. That's great. I also really enjoyed the best editing winner from Everything Everywhere All. I just thought he had like an extremely charming speech mentioning that it was only his second movie and stuff like that. I think he properly got at sort of the like, what am I doing up here kind of vibe that I expect from more people at the Oscars. So yeah, I mean, I thought the speeches for the most part were really solid. There weren't a lot that went on like too long. There was that one guy who's like, let me have my brief anecdote, and then spoke for about 3 minutes.
Long
But
time,
yeah,
yeah.
but I agree with you. I mean, they just have a habit of jumping in right before that second person could get to the microphone, and they know what
Yeah.
they're doing. They know what they're
Yeah.
doing.
But no, overall, I thought it was pretty good. The way that they had everybody presented. I think when Guillermo said animation is not a genre, that was a beautiful statement to make. I know one of the shorts also had, I don't think it was a winner. They were attributing that it was the first filmmaker with Down syndrome to win an award for one of the shorts. I know he got to speak.
Hmm.
I don't know if they were
Yeah,
producer on
that
it,
might have
but
been extra
shout
goodbye.
out that. And yeah, I did like, because they've been doing this the whole run, so I don't even know if it's new to say, but catching every person from everywhere all at once, either have the googly eye on a tie, on a
Yeah,
ring, on a net, like it was like an Easter egg hunt for the googly eye. So
right.
I've been enjoying that for the whole run.
Oh, and neither of us said Kihi Kwan, which at this point it's like, yeah, another award ceremony with Kihi Kwan gave a beautiful emotional speech,
I
but
don't know, man, but I
this one
can't
was
award him. I
particularly
think his
good.
Golden Globe speech was better. Like, come on, man, you got to pull up with him there. He, poor guy, he's like giving his all to, and like the indie spirited ones. Like, dang, should I have saved some for the Oscars? By the time he
I
got to the
know.
Oscars, he still had a great one. I mean, it's let me pull it up right here. Mom, I just won an Oscar is all you have to say, really.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I would highly recommend go listen to all the other ones he's had, because there's some. I think the other ones are just more emotional, more dramatic. This man felt like he had reached the finish line. Like he just ran. Yeah, he's enjoying it, but he's also tired. It's the end of the road.
yeah.
So yeah, Mom, I just won an Oscar is iconic.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has had more people to thank than Kihi Kwan over the past like 5 months.
And saying that his Goonies co-star is now his manager, that's raw.
Yeah, that's
That's
great.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So my last question about the 2023 Oscars, the TV ratings. They were up 12% from their all-time low last year, and as we talked about at the start, some of that might have been slap-driven buzz. But
Agreed.
this year also did feature lots of movies that people actually saw and liked. They nominated Top Gun Maverick as well as Avatar The Way of Water for Best Picture. And they awarded Best Picture to every Letterboxd lurker's favorite film of last year. So, Art, let me ask you, do you think the 2023 show actually boosted interest in the Oscars going forward?
No, I think the viral incident from last year did, and I think
You
that's
think
what they
it's
need to
all
focus.
slap? You think it's all slap generated?
You think people go to these awards to see if someone's going to win? Or do you think people revisit these shows like they do a movie depending on what they can meme out of it? That's the market we're in. Whether people want to agree with that or not, that's what makes it. No one's going there to see a winner. People are going
I
there to
don't know
see a
about that.
ceremony.
I think a
Are you
lot of
talking
people
about
were
film
really
fans or are you talking about real people?
I think there's an argument to make that more film fans watched the show this year.
I don't think film fans break the records. I think you need outside people who don't care about that. Your family watching, my family watching, and none of them care for the lineup of the movies. They care about what's the ceremony going to host. That's why last year had so many people tuning in after the fact because something actually happened.
Sure, but I think there's also a lot of people who recognize that we were on the precipice of a historic night, and there's a lot of people who normally don't care to see the same few Hollywood people get these kinds of awards, that maybe were like, oh, I do want to see Michelle Yeoh give a speech. I do want to see Kiki Kwan give a speech. There's probably a lot of people who never loved a movie as much as they loved Everything Everywhere All at Once, who saw that it was starting to pick up awards buzz and actually tuned into the Oscars. I think there's an argument to make that like
The
there
people who
was
like Everything Everywhere All at Once are the film fans. That's the whole joke
Are
of
they?
Everything Everywhere All at Once. Yes!
Are they?
Bro, you mentioned it in the show. Anyone who tries to show Everything Everywhere All at Once to their parents or
I just
someone
don't
outside
think
of
the
film circle doesn't
Oscars.
like it.
I don't think the Oscars, especially given how much the ratings have fallen over the past few years,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're getting every film fan. I think a lot of, like you're saying, a lot of film fans are just waiting for the clips on Twitter and to meme on it and stuff like that. And I think there's a chance that more people were actually invested in the ceremony this year because of the movies they chose to award and nominate.
Sure. I think that the award shows it's really no different than an indie spirits for some people. Golden
Mhm.
Globes, all of that. It's not Super Bowl levels, you can agree with that, right? There's a reason why The Last of Us moved for the Super Bowl, but it will never move for the Oscars.
But it's not as, the ratings aren't as foolproof as they are for the Super Bowl. They've been dropping a lot more than they have for the Super Bowl. So
Right.
there's a segment of people out there that used to watch this show that are no longer watching this show. And I would argue that those people are more likely to tune in if the Oscars are awarding movies that they've seen or are invested in. And that's
For
not
sure.
going to be
I
like,
agree
it's
with
not
that.
going to be enough to bring the Oscars back to where they were when they were consistently the second most watched TV show, but it might be enough to make that, to keep them on network TV and not get them booted to YouTube or Disney Plus in the next 3 years.
I also disagree with that. I will one up the thing that you had said about people tuning in for
Mhm.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think they were tuning in for Top Gun. I think that's why
Yeah.
that's the gag that opened the show. I think
Yeah.
that you had told
No,
me
I
that the
agree.
New
I
York
agree.
Times got hit just because they didn't include it in their top list.
Right.
That's the movie that people came in wanting to root for, right? Because if we're saying that
Mhm.
this is supposed to be like a competition of sorts, what are people coming in to root for? And I think outside audiences, the mainstream audience, came in to root for Top Gun. Did that make it?
I agree.
No, right?
Yeah.
What do they keep? They don't worry about a stunt category. They don't worry about a motion captures category. They best popular category. Maybe let's do a segment where we award the Flash. Clearly, they know what's missing from attracting that wider audience. A
Mhm.
lot of people still haven't seen the lineup. Let's be honest. Most
Mhm.
people have not seen all of the They have not seen Women Talking. They have not seen All Quiet on the Western Front. Those are
Yeah.
still very much Oscar movies. But
True.
something like Top Gun, something like Avatar getting nominated, but never winning. Do you see that being a bigger push? Because I felt that when Lord of the Rings finally took it, all those years following was the best the Oscars has
Yeah.
ever been.
No, and I agree. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once, I do want to attribute a slight boost to that. But it's nothing in comparison to what the boost would have been if they gave it or gave some more awards to Top Gun Maverick. If they ended up giving Best Actor to Tom Cruise and he was there, right? Like that's a much bigger deal for the future of the Oscars than Everything Everywhere All at Once succeeding. So whatever that movie is that might break that, since they are seemingly allowing some more blockbusters in, that will be a big one. Like hopefully, that's like Dune, or maybe 100 million people see Oppenheimer next year, and it's great. I don't know what that movie is going to be. I think I agree with you that that's like what it's going to take to really rebound the Oscars. But I want to at least attribute something to this year, because I think they got a lot of the nominees right this year.
Well, we'll see next year.
If we
this
will,
year
I
got
guess,
the boost
yeah.
from last year, then we'll see what the boost is for next year, depending
Yeah.
on how they felt about the show.
And also what movies
but they
they
should
end up
move to
nominating
YouTube.
next year.
They need to move to YouTube. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but people want to attract people with their picks. You need to attract them by where they're at, because we also couldn't even log in because it's still done through cable, right?
Yeah.
We were like, what are we gonna get YouTube TV for 7 days to see if we can boot it up? They do make it way more
Mhm.
difficult when the Golden Globes are streaming online.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would make the show better. It's just there's money
Okay,
involved, and
sure.
they don't want
Let's
to.
give it to
Yeah,
everything all at once, but
you're
not
not
change it
gonna
in other ways. It should.
you're not getting a $7 million ad buy on YouTube. That's for sure.
I disagree.
We'll see. I mean, it was an exciting Oscars. I enjoyed watching it. I'm glad that I
It
actually
was
enjoyed
a
it
solid
this
year.
year. I didn't enjoy it the year before.
I enjoyed it the year before. I was just perplexed. That's it.
Any
No, I
final
think it was
thoughts
good
on
wins.
the ceremony?
Yeah, anyone that you think should have won.
I mean, we talked about this a lot, but I just personally don't like when the movies tend to, or when the awards tend to get focused on one or two movies. And I don't think All Quiet on the Western Front deserved at least half of those Oscars. I'd love for Babylon or something to get production design. And I don't think
Score.
everything everywhere all at once deserved a lot of those Oscars either. I wanted Tar to get some love. It's still crazy to me that Kate Blanchett is not a winner for that performance, but whatever. And also Banshees,
Makes
like
it
I
more
love
iconic.
that script. That's the best script of last year. And yeah,
Mhm.
you're right. It does make it more iconic, but it's just a little bit crazy in a year where The Fablemans got nominated for several awards, uh, Tar got nominated for several awards, The Banshees of Inisherin got nominated for several awards. All of them are going home empty-handed after Oscar night.
Empty-handed, bro.
Yeah, yeah, not even
Empty.
one. Yeah.
Babylon
How
should have
about
won
you?
score.
Yeah,
That's it. That's
I
mine.
agree.
Babylon
I
should have won
just
score.
that's puzzling to me. They lost to three notes going over and over.
I look. I'm not a hater of the All Quiet one either. It's not that bad. I get it. Everyone's got a new joke for that score, but it shouldn't have won over Babylon.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer light. Anyway, that's all for our podcast on the 2023 Oscars. We'll be back on this channel in just a moment, talking about The Last of Us season 1 and talking
Mm.
about Succession season 4. Lots of good stuff, as well as our patron hang. So if you are a patron or want to become one for as little as $1 a month on patreon.com/intercutpod, you can come chat with us later tonight. But you can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at Zshevich. That's ZSHEV as in Viola Davis, ICH. And check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. And a shout out to Wiley, who gave us that super chat earlier in the show. We ran into him at South by Southwest, which is fun. We ran into a few intercuties during the festival. So always good to chat with y'all. And thanks for the continued support. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me at the next film festival and blogging it over on Letterbox, over on Twitter, or every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then make sure you subscribe not just to the audio podcast, but to the video feed as well on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/IntercutPod, where you can find new episodes of the Intercut Weekend Must Watch streaming on our YouTube channel every Monday. And please leave us a comment, like the videos. Consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. It does a lot to support the podcast and push it out to more people. Thanks to our listeners in Kenya and Nigeria for putting us on the TV and film podcast charts out there. Like our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter pages. Support our Patreon. You can find all of them at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, more acceptance speeches should be cover songs.